Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome to Culture Night.
Where each week we drink fancy wine and watch movies that are in some way culturally significant. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sarah. And we are back with a bonus episode.
What?
Surprise. So we are taking a mid-season musicals break because we're going to go see some movies. And this is going to be a whole different experience. Yeah. We're going to take you along for the journey, especially if you're watching on YouTube. You're going to get a real visual experience with this one. And
we are going to be doing the Barbenheimer. So we will not be watching our movies here like we normally do. We'll actually be going to the theater.
What is that?
To watch mostly back-to-back Barbie and then Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I mean, it's all
very similar movies.
All the rage on social media. And since we are a movie podcast, we kind of felt like we probably needed to go and see them.
Yep. It's not just being culturally informed about the past, but also staying on top of pop culture as well. So I figured it made a lot of sense now that we have kind of a groove to go ahead and start watching some of these as they take place as well.
Yes, and I'm not going to complain about a night off from the children and to go to the movies and maybe enjoy a glass of wine at the movies.
Yes, we'll be going to one of those fancy upscale movie theaters where we can get food and beverages. Obviously, we'll get some fancy wine and rate and review after the movies.
Yes, so we are doing a little pre-roll beforehand. We're going tomorrow. So we are going to just go through some of our beginning questions. We won't do slept on it or deep dives or
we'll save that for
behind the screens.
Next episode.
Yes, this one is just a bonus, just talking mostly about Barbie and Oppenheimer. So with that being said, we are watching Barbie and Oppenheimer. What year are they from? Tell us.
They are from the year 2023. So let's hop into our time machine and head back to last week. Well, first of all, Barbie is rated PG-13. Oppenheimer is rated R. And obviously, those are the modern day versions of those ratings.
Yes. It'll be interesting to actually watch like current PG-13 and R movies and see how they compare to a lot of the PG-13 and R movies that we've seen and PG movies and G movies. And
yeah, it'll be interesting to watch Barbie. We've specifically tried to learn as little as possible about these movies so we can kind of experience them as they're meant to be seen as opposed to getting everyone's takes before we watch it. But I'm interested to see. I have heard that Barbie is very much not a kids movie, and it being PG-13 makes sense. I also assume Oppenheimer is going to be fairly dark if it's R. Obviously, I understand
given the subject matter, was assuming that one was R. And I understand there's a lot of people, like you said, that are like, oh, Barbie's not for kids. And I'm like, well, wouldn't you look at the rating when you're like buying the ticket and know like, PG-13, maybe I shouldn't take my kid to it.
Right.
And also like, I feel like our generation is such the Barbie generation that I kind of imagined it would be more for the nostalgia of the 80s and 90s kids.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see how we feel.
This year is very much a nostalgia year. Because let's talk about the top 3 movies so far of this year.
Yes.
Number 1 being the Super Mario Brothers movie, which is very nostalgic. We've watched that a lot with our kids.
It's so good.
Yeah, a lot of good references to the video games and a lot of great nostalgic songs from the time period that the Mario movies first came out, like Thunderstruck and Take Me On by Aha, like just so many great songs in that. Number 2, Super Mario Brothers grossed $574 million so far. Barbie has grossed $394.5 million so far, and Spider-Man Across the Universe has grossed $379 million so far.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Sorry, Across the Spider-Verse. My mistake.
Get it right.
My microphone is kind of in the way of my phone there. Yeah, so obviously you've seen Mario. We are about to see Barbie, and I've not seen Spider-Man just yet. The top 3 songs released so far are Antihero by Taylor Swift, Kill Bill by SZA, and Unholy by Sam Smith and Kim Petras. It's
really embarrassing that I feel like I know more of the songs off of the list from the 70s and 80s than I do from the current year in which we are living.
Yeah, I guess having kids, we're a lot of listening to what they want to listen to or listening to podcasts in the car. So I can say that I don't know any of those songs, embarrassingly. I had to look up how to say SZA. Didn't want to embarrass myself again.
You weren't supposed to say that. You're supposed to sound like you were so cool and you knew how to say it.
Before we get into what we know about these movies that we're watching next, we also need to mention that what are we drinking tonight?
Tonight we are drinking the 2021 Black Box Cabernet Sauvignon.
Very fancy.
We brought the after show wine to the before show since this one is just a short and sweet.
We can't bring the bottle of wine with us to the movies.
Could you imagine if I pulled out the black box in the middle?
I feel like you could sneak that easily in like a purse. Or just strap it to your
Well, they
stomach?
make purses that hold bottles of wine.
But do they hold bags of wine?
I mean, if they hold bottles, they have to hold bags.
Maybe.
We are not going to sneak it in. We are going to purchase wine at the theater. We are not those
like
people.
Adults. What do you know about Barbie and Oppenheimer?
I know that Margot Robbie and, oh my God, what's his name? Ryan Gosling are in Barbie. I know that there's a lot of pink. I know that almost all of my friends have gone to see it wearing various pink attire. So I felt like for those of you watching on YouTube, I had to wear pink for tonight, and probably will wear the same outfit tomorrow.
I've heard a lot of people are mad about it.
Yes, there is controversy. I have not Googled it. I think it's mostly about it not being for kids. I mean, if it was a cartoon, I would expect it to be for kids. The live action, I don't know.
Yeah. Is it Margot Robbie or Margot Robbie? I thought it was Robbie, but then I've heard Robbie, and I don't.
I really confidently said Robbie because I wanted to sound cool like I knew, but I have no idea.
I think I'll. Yeah.
We will. That'll be a deep dive for tomorrow as we walk into the theater. We'll correctly pronounce her name.
Yes.
And Oppenheimer, I know that everybody's talking about it in relation to the fact that it came out around the same time as Barbie. I know it's about the Manhattan Project, so I imagine it's going to be real dark, but I'm a lot more intrigued about it than I thought I was going to be.
Yeah, it's a Christopher Nolan movie, and his movies are usually very fast-paced and keep you interested the whole time. A lot of fast dialogue, and it's got Cillian Murphy in it, who I just love as an actor. For the Barbie movie, I know, like what you said, basically, just that it's not for kids, very colorful. People are mad about it.
But people love it. I mean, like all the women that are in their 30s and 40s love it. So I'm very intrigued. I'm also interested to see how we feel about it based on the order we choose to watch them in. We haven't fully decided. We need to look at the show times again, but I mean, it is really going to truly be based on what time we can get one movie to end, so we don't have a huge gap or too short of a gap to start the next one.
It's like booking a flight.
Yeah. Oh God.
Trying to figure out the layover.
But yes, we'll see. We'll do a quick little intro tomorrow as we're going into the theater once we've decided what order we'll watch them in. But we are excited for this. This is fun because it's just so different from our normal weekly setup. I mean, after 6 months of doing this, we figured we better switch it up, right?
Yep. It'll be a fun little break from the norm. So can't wait, and we'll catch you guys in the car.
Yes.
Cheers.
Barbenheimer.
Right.
That was Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
This is proving to be very interesting. Actually going to the theaters is definitely a different experience from being at home.
One thing that was kind of consistent though is that our position on the in the theater relative to where we usually sit for our movies was actually very much the same. So it felt kind of familiar, but much different experience with all the full sound and much larger screen. Not the largest. We have an 85-inch TV that we watch these on at home. This obviously is much larger.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we got out of the house for a movie. It's been good, and I'm excited to see another one. We chose to do Oppenheimer first, purely based on show times, the run times, and how we could coordinate everything together. So
yeah, usually, I guess with the name Barbenheimer, you'd expect to do Barbie then Oppenheimer. But I think based on the show times, this is going to work out better. Also, it'd be nice to have something hopefully lighter. I assume Barbie's going to be a bit lighter than this. This was very dark, long, and deep. Yes. That's what she said. But it was, quite the experience. But before we go too far, let's start with, well, first of all, what did we eat and drink this week? Because I went to one of those nice dine-in theaters. So
So we had a snack. We had pretzel bites with cheese dip, ranch, and honey mustard. Delicious. I'm starving, so they were great. And then we drank, was it Robert Mondavi Cab Sav?
Undisclosed year. Wasn't really on the menu.
We are going to look when we go back in for round 2 to see if there is a year when we are back in there. But as of right now, I would guess like early 2021.
I was going to guess 2021.
So we will see.
So the wine scale generally is 0 to 10, 10 being the best thing ever. However, usually the scale is heavily weighted because we usually just only drink really good wine. I think this is our first week not drinking Tobin James, however. So that being said,
my number that I have is based off of the wine scale. Yeah,
based on that wine scale, I'm gonna give it a 2.
Okay, I was gonna give it a 2.3. So
yeah,
right in there.
For my notes that I had, I didn't really get much flavor. It just tasted honestly like red wine. Like that's all I really got from it. I like was searching as I was drinking it. Like, there was nothing on the nose.
I thought it was a fruity nose. Like it was very much like, oh, this is a wine. Like it's a red wine smell, not anything complex.
Maybe it's just because before we had the wine, we actually had a Manhattan, because it was on special for Oppenheimer.
Yes,
at
the
theater.
Manhattan Project.
Yes, so we had so maybe that just like killed my olfactories or something. But I really got nothing. I thought maybe some strawberry, but like it was really nothing.
Yeah, I said very fruity nose, grape or grape jelly, which is, I mean, it's made of grapes, so not super complex. I said pretty flat and not very complex, so not much there.
Yeah,
it wasn't bad. It was fine.
Yeah, strawberry / cherry at most, but that's about it for that. As
for
the movie rating out of 10, I am going to give it a 5.0.
5.3. Man, we're right there. We're always close, but not right on.
Yeah, for just a lot of reasons. Yes. I thought the cinematography was really great, but it was extremely hard to follow.
Thank you. I mean, we didn't talk about it during the movie, but I'm like, what is happening? Like, if there would have been years, and I know that there was some like black and white versus color, like that helped a little bit, but I had no idea when anything was happening. I didn't realize we were way back in time, or that like
It seemed like I thought at one point that it was like much after the war, and it kind of was with like the hearing, but then all of a sudden it's still in colors, and it was before the atomic bomb was dropped during the war, but then they had black and white scenes that happened after the war, so it was like really kind of confusing. And honestly, like it was a 3-hour movie. They put a lot into that, but I still had to note that this would have been much better as a 10-part miniseries.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Yeah. Yes.
Because they would have also given us time between episodes to like look up who a lot of these characters were, because a lot of the names I recognize, obviously, like Heisenberg and Fermi, and like, you know, from all of our science textbooks, learning about that. I would like to have learned more about them, and then also some of these characters, I kept hearing names and being like, oh crap, have we met that person yet? Or is that just the name that I recognize because of history, and who is this person?
Yeah. And I mean, I was just about to say before you even went into the 10-part miniseries, is like, I just feel like I have to go home and do like a whole week's worth of research to understand everything that I saw. And then back to some other things that you said, is like you recognize names, but it was because I learned it in history or because they've already said it. And like some characters, like Rami Malek's character, didn't even have a line until the very end of the movie. So it's like, oh, I recognize that person, but like it was just, there was a lot.
And I just wonder how much like of the scenes were cut, because some of these were pretty big name people and had, you know, very little screen time on some of these, that I wonder if this was originally like 5.5 hours of footage that they cut down to 3 or something.
It must be. I just also still can't get over how stacked the cast was. I mean, people kept coming on screen. I'm like, I know you. I mean,
yeah, I tried not to look too much into the movie beforehand.
I didn't either.
So I knew a couple of the characters, obviously Cillian Murphy, but that was the main extent of it. But there were so many people, that were big names, but also people that were small names that I just recognized their faces and knew them from other things.
Yeah, we can talk more about them in our notes.
But for my general movie rating, usually it's like, you know, how quotable is it, rewatchable? Would I sit down and pick it up if it was already on? And the pop culture impact. I mean, obviously it's a cultural phenomenon right now, but I don't want that to too heavily weigh into my thoughts on the movie just because it's popular. Would I just go ahead and be like, hey, what do we want to do tonight? Let's go ahead and rewatch Oppenheimer. Probably never. No. But I feel like it's a movie that I need to rewatch 3 or 4 times to really understand everything that I saw in there.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I almost feel like if I am going to tell anybody to see this movie, I'll say, read the Wikipedia page on the Manhattan Project, not the movie, on like what actually happened in history beforehand, so that you have a lot of that. Because I mean, we learned about it, but how long ago was high school?
We learned very little about it.
So long ago that like whatever I did know isn't something that I actively think about all the time. So it was a lot. Yeah. My brain's gonna be tired after this. I'm glad we did this first, though. I think doing this second, after like the experience of being in the theater and doing all that,
would have been just blob.
It would have been too hard to follow. So I think starting with this one was a good choice.
Let's go into the movie description next.
Yes.
I guess I will go first. It follows the story of Oppenheimer from when he gets involved with developing the atomic bomb and leading that project to the aftermath afterwards. Pulls in a lot of his I guess, affiliations with the Communist Party, and ties into the like Red Scare type era after the World War ended. And there's just a whole lot of political games and shenanigans that kind of went on afterwards. And it's a long movie.
You have the...
Yes.
The description, according to Andrew's phone.
Yes.
The world changes forever.
There's a second. I thought that was the only description at first, and I was like, well, okay.
Oh man, I love that I get this job. This is the best part. The story of J. Robert Oppenheimer's role in the development of the atomic bomb during World War II. That's it.
Yeah, leaves a lot for such a long movie to,
yeah,
a lot out of it.
Usually I like the vague things, but I probably would have put a little bit more into that.
And his like political fallout afterwards or something, maybe about it.
Like in the development of the bomb during World War II. We all know that. But this is all about the political aftermath and like some of the stuff that was going on while it actually happened, but how much it all changed afterwards. Yeah. I don't love that. Yours was better.
Yeah, I guess this movie was about 3 hours long. I feel like it either should have been, like I said, 10 hours of miniseries, or like maybe 2 hours, because it just seemed like there's so much. They were really hammering home, there's a lot of like communist connections over and over and over again. That's like, we get the point at some point, that it was just so much.
And I honestly would have preferred just like leave out, was it Louis Strauss, whatever his name is.
The political appointment.
Yeah, leave him out. Leave that whole story out, because I mean, I know that that's probably what the whole story they were trying to tell. But I would have found it more interesting, just like how he was appointed to the project, like the building of Los Alamos, and like that story, and then some of his like, the psychological effects that building this atomic bomb had on him afterwards would have been more than enough for me.
Yeah.
In a 2 hour time frame, and leave out that whole other part.
Yeah. It very much could have been cut out, but you're not going to cut out an actor like Robert Downey Jr. Entirely from the movie. But
I will say I did have to Google it during the movie to see if that was him, because I was like, I feel like that's him, but
he was one of the most obvious ones.
I don't know. I think it was the lighting and the hats and the black and white that threw me off just enough that it took me a second.
Was the movie what you expected?
No.
It's about what I expected. I kind of heard it was like the essence of it was Oppenheimer creating the bomb and living in the world that he created afterwards, and that basically kind of felt like it. I did not expect all of the communist connections. I didn't really know that from history or expect that, but I knew that there was going to be a lot of like fallout of like, hey, it's awesome, we ended the war, and then that kind of evolved into, oh my god, the devastation.
I knew that it was called Oppenheimer. I knew it was about the Manhattan Project, and that is the extent of my knowledge of this. So all of that political communist stuff was way more than I was expecting. I mean, and I also knew it was 3 hours, so I should have known there's going to be a lot more to it.
I do remember when it was first announced, and just hearing about it on Reddit, and a lot of times when big movies are being made, they'll post like, early shots from the movie, and there was a picture early on in the development that said like, first image of Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer. And it's like one of the black and white photos of him in the hall where he's got a hat on and has a cigar. And I remember I opened it, my very first thought was also exactly what the first comment was, where it just said, looks like Cillian Murphy in a hat. Because a lot of times when they show these characters, like they've really transformed into the role, and it's like, oh man, it's like, no, literally it just looks like him in a hat. He did a great job though. But that's about the extent of mainly what I'd heard about it, besides just some rumblings after people had watched it. How well did it age / could it be made today? Well, it's aged about 2 weeks, and it could be made today because it was just made.
Yeah, those questions are not super relevant to this.
Do they say the title of the movie in the movie?
Well, yeah,
it's
his name.
His name a lot. Title.
Does it fit the movie?
Yeah, Manhattan Project probably could have been.
Yeah, but it was more about specifically Oppenheimer. I feel like there was a show recently, or in the past like 10, 15 years about the Manhattan Project that I watched, and that was more about like the people there, and I feel like the Manhattan Project kind of deal is more overarching than it just being about him, and I think this was a lot more about him and his role.
Yeah.
So I think it's fine.
Were there any actors that went on to do bigger things? Well, no one's really done anything since then, but there were a lot of big names in there, like we kind of mentioned.
I almost feel like we need to pull up a list when we get home and read them off in the after show.
Yeah, just one of the I wanted to call out. One was Gary Oldman as Truman. He's just a chameleon, and every time I see him in some of these roles where he's just really, really like in like makeup and looks so different, I'm like, man, is that him? And like looking it up and being like, okay, I can tell, but just barely that's him, because he really. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed it out, but that he's in.
I think I probably would have figured it out in another like couple seconds, but it was well done.
Yeah, and then Josh Hartnett, who I just like thought hadn't been in anything since, I guess we saw him in Sin City, which was technically after Pearl Harbor. But I think it's funny that he's also involved now in a movie that takes place about World War II, because he was in, like, I guess his biggest movie was Pearl Harbor before that, but I feel like I haven't seen him in anything in like 15 years.
I mean, honestly, I will say I probably couldn't have told you anything he was in. I just remember like everybody in middle school, high school being obsessed with him.
Yeah.
Just the name is more popular to me than what his specific roles are. I was clearly never a big fan, but he's fine.
What impact do you think the movie had on pop culture / do you feel cultured after watching it? Obviously, it's a big pop culture phenomenon. Everyone just keeps talking about it.
It is blown up with this whole Barbie situation. So I'm intrigued to see Barbie next and also look more into what actually this phenomenon is. Because I keep seeing people post about it, but we knew we were going to do this. So we tried not to overread into it so that we wouldn't know too much. But I don't know that this is going to have a long...
I was about to say, like, no pun intended, but it's kind of like a flash in the pan, you know, kind of like... As bad as that is, it just kind of seems like it's, you know, everyone's talking about it, it's all the rage right now, but once it leaves theaters, it's not like, I don't think it'll have much relevance, or not relevance, but people aren't going to be as excited about it when it's on streaming or on DVD.
I think they lucked into the hype. I think this and Barbie lucked into the hype of each other and whatever this hype is, and they are going to get a lot more in the box offices than they probably planned when they started making these movies.
I mean, Oppenheimer at least is a Nolan movie. Those are always going to do pretty well, but... yeah, it'll be interesting to see in the next several weeks if this is still on top of people's minds.
Yeah. We'll see. Only time will tell. We'll report back in a couple weeks, in a month or two, and see if there's any more to say about it.
So let's move on to our notes.
Well, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Do you feel cultured after watching it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, honestly, more cultured historically, just about learning more about the Manhattan Project. As for like pop culture things, now that I can say, I'll be able to say that I've seen Oppenheimer, as everyone is talking about it for right now. And if the Barbenheimer craze ever is mentioned again in 3 to 4 years, sure. But yeah, mainly around like the historical part about it. I like in dying to read the Wikipedia pages about.
Oh yeah, I can't.
Him,
we're gonna be
Manhattan
up.
Project.
We're gonna go home and lay in bed and like scroll through Wikipedia in the dark.
Yeah,
it's gonna be great.
Can't wait.
Do you want to do notes now, or do you want to save them for later so we have time to?
Sure. Let's save our notes for after both movies.
Yes. So we will cap it here. We are going to go get some more wine, most importantly, order dinner, and find our seats because we got another movie to see.
Yep. Coming soon. Right.
Catch you later.
Cheers to a double feature.
That was a lot, but
it was a long afternoon, but we are back in studio, aka our basement.
And we have lived through the Barbenheimer experience. And now we're here to tell you about it.
Oh, man.
First, as always, we're going to talk about the wine. I've already gone over the wine scale earlier, so I won't rehash that.
Thank you.
For the second movie, we had the Layer Cake Malbec. Jinx. We're going to assume 2021.
Yeah.
They didn't give us the year on the menu thing. You can rate it first this time.
A 1.
Yeah, I was gonna generously give it a 1.5, but like I don't think it deserves that.
I know. I was thinking about points, and I was just like, it was red wine. Yes, It wasn't sweet, so like it wasn't a 0. Like I've had some really bad, sweet, gross red wines. It was just generic red wine.
It was alcohol forward, but it also had that slight carbonation that I like hate in red wine.
It was not as bad as that one.
Oh yeah, that's why I was gonna give it a 1.5 because I was just thinking of like that wine we had before.
Okay. It might be a 1.5 because that one we had that one time.
But I do not recommend the Layer Cake Malbec. Now, who knows how well they keep their wines at a movie theater?
Can we also talk about how a bottle of that was like $39.99, and I'm pretty certain it's like $11 at the store. Yeah. I'm gonna see if I can find it at Kroger this week and get a price on it because that's outrageous.
I mean, I get it. That's how movie theaters make their money, but like. Kind of silly.
Yeah. I would rather spend $40 on like a good bottle of wine that we normally drink. And this has just really brought to light that we are really spoiled by the amount of nice wine we get to drink. And now I'm becoming a little bit of a wine snob.
I think the delta between like a $40 Tobin James wine that we get in our shipments versus a $40 of wine at a movie theater, the delta is just gigantic. It's just very, very large. I will say though, I think the black box wine is levels above the 2 wines that we had tonight.
You might be right. Let me taste it and see.
Yeah, just got like more character, smoother, not carbonated.
Yeah. It's just it's a good steady.
I'd rate it a 3, which is higher than other wines.
It is.
By far.
Okay, so enough about wine. Everybody's here for the movies.
Yeah. So Barbie, on a scale of 1 to 10, I am going to rate it a 4.2.
I'm giving it a 6.2, which I think feels right between the two of us.
Yeah, I just like thinking about it. It seemed like it was an idea that had potential. They didn't really quite capitalize on it. Instead, they were just like, okay, we got a general idea. Now we're just going to get a whole bunch of people, like a star-studded cast, and throw it in there, throw some musical numbers in there, and call it a day. And it seemed like there was something that could have been fleshed out a little bit better.
I will agree. I think it could have been a lot better with the same ideas. It's like they just were like, yeah, we got it. Let's just jump right into it.
Started out strong, and I was like, okay, this has some potential. It's kind of funny. They're kind of like pushing some boundaries here, like, kind of be a little bit meta, breaking the fourth wall in a way with like the narration. And then it just kind of like was weird. Yeah.
But I will say, to your scale, if it was on, I would probably watch it. Right off the top of my head, I can't think of anything quotable, but I'm sure that if I watched it a second time, something quotable would come from it. I'm just really tired from watching 5 hours of
There were
movies.
definitely some like fun one-liners.
And I think like it's going to have its pop culture moment in it. I think this, more than Oppenheimer, will have a little bit more of a pop culture place.
Yeah, I mean, given that it's more approachable, it's much shorter too.
And the nostalgia factor, like, that's why it gets a 6.2 for me.
Yeah, that's honestly just why it gets as high ratings it does for me. I just feel like as a movie, it was lacking, but there were some quotable parts and one-liners. It seemed like a cool premise on the surface, and like that's all I can do. I'm not going to sit down and be like, I want to watch this from start to finish. I might watch a little bit of it if it's on, but 4.2 seems right for me.
All right. So why don't you give us your description?
Barbie is in Barbie land. There's a whole lot of Barbies that are all Barbie, from the various like personas and various models of Barbies that have been out there. Has an existential crisis for some reason, goes to the real world to solve it, and ends up discovering more, I guess, about the role of being a woman in the real world.
Yep. Well done. According to the TV, Barbie and Ken are having the time of their lives in the colorful, seemingly perfect world of Barbie land. However, when they get a chance to go to the real world, they soon discover the joys and perils of living among humans.
It's pretty much what I said. I did completely leave out Ken.
You did.
What does that say about me?
I will say I mentally inserted Ken while you were telling your description. I was like, it's a bunch of Barbies that are Barbies. And I was like, oh yeah, and the Kens are all Kens. But you didn't say that out loud. Yeah. I like this description a lot, though. Much better than the Oppenheimer description.
I thought you were saying much better than your description.
No.
Thanks.
Yours was good. The Oppenheimer one was terrible. But I think this one is a really well done, doesn't give too much away, doesn't have some stupid pun in it that makes me laugh. Like, it's just a very succinct version of what it should be. I like it.
Yeah. But going on to, was the movie what you expected? I'm going to say not entirely. Like, to an extent, yes, but I thought it was going to be more someone living in the real world as like Barbie, like the basis of like Barbie and being really fake and everything. I didn't kind of see the whole like Lego movie type rendition of this entirely.
Yeah, I'll say it's more yes what I expected than no what I expected. I did know there was like a big feminism take to it and like girl power.
Yeah, I definitely heard that.
I knew all of that going into it. I love the Mattel aspect to it. I think that is hilarious. And honestly, like, I think they did a pretty good job with how they incorporated that. Like, I thought that was very funny. That I didn't really expect. Overall, it's pretty what I expected.
I had a note about the Mattel stuff of being like, I'm just honestly surprised that like Mattel was okay with this.
Me too.
Like, how they were kind of like really pushing the lines, throwing them under the bus in a couple ways and making jokes about it. That thought it was kind of like, I'm interested to see like how that came about, whether that was controversial or not.
Yeah, I agree. I did see something. It was like a YouTube title or like a shorts title that was like, the one thing Margot Robbie didn't think Mattel would let in, or like the one scene, and I didn't watch it because I didn't want to know going into it. But now I'm like, what scene was she like not sure that they would let in there? It was probably the F-bomb at the end that they bleeped out with a Mattel logo.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Oh man, so good. Anyways,
how well did it age / could it be made today?
it was made today.
Yes, I would say it was received rather controversially, which I feel like the only way it could be controversial is if you chose to be offended by it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that says more about you than it does about the movie.
Yes. I do think a lot of the people that are upset though are also like the moms of girls that are like 4 and 5 and 6 that were like, oh, I'll take my daughter to see Barbie. And it is not a take your 5-year-old to Barbie kind of movie. It's a maybe take like your tween daughter like to kind of movie, but I don't think it's for
I think that was
girls.
A fraction of the outrage. More of it was kind of like the whole like, I can't believe they're portraying women this way, and like, you know, being offended by that and women empowerment and calling it like all sorts of names.
People are going to find reasons to be mad.
Yeah, it's just
about anything.
It's more just like it says something about you if you chose to watch this and be mad about it. I don't think there was anything controversial with how it was portrayed, and if anything, if you didn't kind of see through a lot of the like really dark humor in it, like you're just kind of sleepwalking through life, I guess. I don't know.
No, I agree. You need to look past it, what they are getting at. Did they say the title of the movie?
A couple times. There's
Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie.
Lots of Barbies for sure.
Yeah, and does the title fit the movie? If you called it anything other than Barbie, it would be a crime.
It was kind of crazy. Like in the first several minutes, Barbie stopped sounding like a word to me. That it's just so used so much that I also had never thought about Barbie as being like short for Barbara. So like it.
Well, I obviously have.
Yeah. Seeing
as that's my mother's name, and she hates the nickname Barbie, so don't call her that.
I had never ever even thought about it until it was like it said 100 times in the first 4 minutes, and I was like, oh. Okay,
and then you find out that it is actually short for Barbara.
Yeah, funny. Were there any actors that went on to do bigger things? Obviously, this movie just came out, but it was a very star-studded cast. Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. Kate McKinnon,
America Ferrera, Michael Cera, Will Ferrell.
Yeah, just a whole lot from what we can just even see on the screen.
On that note, can I just say, I feel like the marketing department failed America Ferrera. And I had zero clue she was in this. And I think she was probably my favorite character. And I think she is what a lot of people are going to love about this movie. And I think it is a crime that she was not more recognized in advertising for this, because I had no clue. I did not look a whole lot into this movie. I did not watch trailers. Like I didn't really know a whole lot going into it. But all I know was the like stills of Margot and Ryan as Barbie and Ken.
Yeah, that's all I really knew about it.
And like, I get maybe you want to like just perceive that it's going to be about Barbie in her dream world. But I don't know. I felt a little let down that I didn't know she was in this.
Yeah, I mean, I try to stay away from a lot of the marketing around movies that I am going to see just because I want to be surprised and not have it kind of be like, oh, did you hear this person's in it? Like if it's supposed to be kind of low-key and a surprise. So I didn't know Michael Cera or Will Ferrell or anyone else was in it either. So
Will Ferrell shocked me to death too.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that at all, but I feel like he played it really well.
Yeah, but I also didn't really fully understand his character.
Yeah, I also I felt like he was just Will Ferrell, not really a character. Like I couldn't really see past that. And
yeah, he was playing like his character from Zoolander, like in a way.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand what he was really getting at, and it seemed confusing. So it's like in a board full of all men designing and like planning Barbie products, and you think it's just gonna be a whole lot of like, ha ha ha, we're men, but then it seemed like he was actually invested in Barbie, and I couldn't really get a read on it.
Yeah.
Didn't feel like that character was fully fleshed out.
I agree. I also, when they got in the elevator and he's like, no, let me push the button, all I could think of was like, that's something Buddy the Elf would say. And then I couldn't get past that for a while. And so it was just trying to sift through his many characters to figure out what this character was supposed to be.
Yeah. I just couldn't get a full read on that one. What impact do you think the movie had on pop culture? Well, obviously it's the whole reason behind why we're watching this is the whole Barbenheimer thing. I think it also is kind of a sign of the times of just how divisive it is in showing how like people either absolutely love it and like, I think it's so like true, or people like hate it and think it's just totally not representative of the real world. And I'm like, shouldn't really be a divide there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think this will have a place in pop culture for a while going forward, and it will kind of keep falling back to these kinds of conversations and what this movie stands for. Mm-hmm. And I think it is something that is different than the norm of what, because I mean, I assume 20 years ago, a Barbie movie would be so different than what this is, that this being portrayed the way it was is a sign of the times and will be a pop culture phenomenon for a while.
Yeah, Barbie movie from 20 years ago would have been much more
just Barbie's Dreamland.
Superficial than very much like, not at all like this.
Barbie drinking from her pretend cup and pouring her pretend milk and walking on her pool because it doesn't actually have water in it. Mm-hmm. Her feet would not go flat.
For sure. Do you feel cultured after watching it?
Yes, 100%.
Yes, because now I can understand a lot of the discourse around what I've heard about the movie.
Now I can't wait to dive into what all the controversial posts, because I've been trying to avoid them. That I'm ready to just like read the comments and get deep in there.
Hear both sides.
Mm-hmm. So
now we can head into notes.
Yes. Do we want to start with Barbie?
Let's start with Oppenheimer.
Okay.
And you can always cut it if it needs to be different.
You can go first on Oppenheimer. I think I went first.
So my first note that I had on Oppenheimer, it was more about the movie theater experience itself, is that it was just really loud.
My first notes are about the movie theater experience too.
It was just like,
oh my
God. Ears kind of got used to it after a while, but it was just felt like it was a bit.
But every once in a while, something in both movies would just hit, and I'd be like, does it need to be this loud?
Yeah, in Barbie, it's like they just turned the subwoofers to max.
And
you didn't
that
hear
bass
for
was
most of the movie, but
bumping.
Some parts was just insane.
Yeah, the explosions in Oppenheimer, I was like, can we turn down just a little bit? It just doesn't need to be that
Especially
loud.
because the contrast between like this, you're seeing the atomic bomb go off. It's very, very quiet because it hasn't hit quite yet. And you kind of like almost forget about it. Then it's just like way too loud really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say it was an experience to see it in theaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely was not the same. I try to get the whole like surround sound experience here, but I don't think I'm going to turn the sound up that loud for a movie. It just seemed like it was a bit too much. Next note being the black and white for flashbacks was cool, and I thought it was going to be helpful at first, but then as we talked about earlier, it just became way too confusing because it seemed like it still was not chronological in a lot of ways.
I still don't know when exactly in time anything took place. Like I really need to go sit down and look at some dates and piece all of those together.
I need someone to recut it and put like a little subtitle there at the bottom that says like this year and like when it was or something.
That's all I wanted.
Or recut it and have it be completely chronological. I've seen movies be recut that way because it just was very hard to follow.
And it's one thing if you're telling like a fictional story and you have these kind of like flashback, flash forward kind of things. But this is something that happened in real life. So you know an exact date and time that these things occurred.
Yeah.
Just pop them on the screen.
At most have like 2 time periods you're cutting between, and a very clear the delineation, whether you have someone looks way differently aged or one is black and white and one's not, but this was just not that.
I mean, they definitely did the like CGI aging, age down, age up on all the characters, but it was not like it was not enough to know.
I need someone to have like a beard or some crazy radical different style so that I can really know right away whether or not it's what time period. I shouldn't have to like really look through it. My next note was that Bernard has gotten old. Bernard from the Santa Claus. He played one of the scientists in the movie, and
I will say I was impressed at how quickly he I don't even think we could see his face, but you heard him talk and you were like, oh my God, is that Bernard? And then I was like, oh my God, you're right.
He looks way different from his character playing
his elfin days.
The Eternal Elf.
The poor guy. I'm sure he hates being known by that, but I mean, being children of things now. Being children of the 90s, I mean, that's just what he is to us. So.
Always.
But I think he was good in that role, though. That very much was a good place for him.
Yeah, he played it really well. I also thought Josh Hartnett had aged quite a bit too. He was in a bunch of movies around a certain time period. Just kind of seemed to be that young, like heartthrob for a while. And now he didn't age poorly. He just looks 20 years older because he is 20 years older.
He looks how he's supposed to look.
Aged gracefully, but it's still it was kind of jarring just because, as I said before, I've not seen him in movies in a while. mentioned that it's hard following all of the timelines. I did find it interesting that there were a lot of parallels, I thought, in between how there was like a, I guess, news came out of Germany about the atomic bomb and some sort of progress they had made. And it felt very similar to today, where we've got this superconductor, LK99, that is currently being researched, where someone published a paper in Korea, and then like overnight, a whole lot of like labs around the world are trying to like reproduce it and figure it all out and do all this analysis on it, that I felt very much like today. Obviously, the technology here hopefully is not used to make bombs, but more made to make all sorts of things that push humanity forward. But as we know, like things generally push to trend towards like making weapons. The atomic bomb, though, I think was very quickly seen as like, hey, this is something that can be used for war. But it felt very, very similar to what I'm seeing happen in the news right now.
Yeah, I was very glad you had briefed me on that situation before this movie. And so I kind of made similar parallels to that,
I think
too.
we literally like on the way.
We did talk about it on the way.
By chance, and talked about that. There were just far too many names in this movie. They needed to have like in the movies where they have like a little like blurb at the bottom that says like this person and their title or you know what they do, because it was so hard to put names to faces, and then when they're off screen and I hear them referred back, and I'm just trying to think like, okay, who was that person? What did they look like in this, or were they even shown in this?
And just that slight visual, like I've read the name under the face would be so much more helpful for the audience. Unfortunately, that would not help anybody who's visually impaired, but for the most people that are going to see this, having some kind of visual, like written out thing.
Like, or give like if you buy the ticket to the movie, give them like a
program,
family tree style thing where it's like here's all the relations to this main character, so you can like figure out what the heck is going on. It was so much.
I know, and I like the more we talk about it, the more I'm like I feel like I need to watch this movie again, but after doing extensive research and understanding, so that I can like appreciate a lot more of it, because I feel like I really didn't take as much from it as I could have, because I just don't know enough about it.
Yeah, and fortunately this one we're not planning to do a slept on it. Yeah, but I feel like this one really needs it.
Yeah, it will at least have a personal slept on it.
Yeah. If
you're going to see Oppenheimer, please read about it before you go.
Maybe we'll post some reels about it or something, but we're not gonna, I think, cover it in the episode as this is a bonus. Next note being the naked in a chair scene where Oppenheimer and his mistress, whatever, are both naked. It just kind of seemed unnecessary at first. I thought they were gonna have a bit more of like cinematography type things. They showed like them like close up and then kind of showed the shift of power based on like how they're positioned in the scene. They didn't really kind of do it. It seemed like they were getting closer and closer to their faces each time they switched cameras back and forth. But I think it was kind of meant to show like that they had nothing to hide there. They were being extremely open and honest with each other in that moment. However, I find it funny. I did hear that in that scene in some countries, they have censored it by doing a CGI black dress over top of the woman. And it looks pretty bad. Oh man,
can you?
Yeah, I'll find the picture for you.
That?
But it's kind of funny that they just had to blur that out.
Yeah, I mean, I get maybe what you're going for, but also we kind of talked about, you were like, I mean, as soon as she was naked, you were like, that's the R rating. And I just felt like that added really nothing to the movie, and that it could have been a PG-13 movie without that.
Yeah, if that's the reason why it's R, that it seems like they just tried to do that just so they could get the R rating, just so they could make. I don't think they'd make more money with PG-13, but I feel like a movie being portrayed as R makes you think that it's going to be darker. And
yeah, I don't know. I didn't really think it added nothing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have added something for some people, but
I mean, I'm never going to say no to boobs, but it just kind of was like, okay, I don't really see the purpose here. But,
yeah.
So I believe the actor that played Borden, the guy that kind of ratted him out or did the report on him, I believe he was in The Dark Knight, which also is a Nolan movie. Just like Cillian Murphy was also in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises. And Gary Oldman, who played the president, President Truman, was also in The Dark Knight as well. So I thought it was interesting, the continuation of a lot of characters that were in Christopher Nolan's like realm. His like movies kind of picks the same people over and over again. Thought that was kind of interesting. Mentioned that Gary Oldman is also a complete chameleon, where he's been so many different people and he just does it so well. And then my last note was that this should have been a mini series.
Yeah. The more I think about it, I think I would have taken a lot more from it. Because even like you said, just the simple act of being able to read a Wikipedia page between episodes and learn more about the history. Because even like we watched The Crown, and we are not caught up. We are many seasons behind. But to be able to watch it, and as a season's or a show or about a specific event is happening, you're like, oh, like, let me just see how accurate this is, or let me learn more about this. And just being able to get that information helps you appreciate the show. And
I'm not going to like read any Wikipedia article in the theater or like necessarily in a movie setting. Sometimes when we're like watching some of these movies, we'll pull up a little bit, but it definitely needed to be much more drawn out and give us a break between episodes.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I'm like a little disappointed it wasn't a miniseries, because I think it would have been a lot more interesting. And I think they could have told a little bit more, added what was missing that they had to cut out of this 3-hour movie, expanded on some things. I think I would have taken more as an audience member.
Would have been great on HBO. Sorry, on Max.
All right, that's the end of your
notes for that movie.
Okay, so my first note, again, about the experience of being in the theater. So many ads and so many previews. What did we time it at? 25 minutes?
Yeah, it was a lot.
I mean, our movie was supposed to start at 2:15, I think, and it was almost 2:40 before the movie even started. I mean, it was...
And I thought it was like done with the previews because there was some like weird change between one of them, and then they did like 3 more previews after that.
Yeah. It was really weird. And then I'm spending the whole movie panicked, like, we only have 30, 40 minutes between movies, and this started 30 minutes later than we started. But yes, we'll have another 20 minutes, but like we have to do, I mean, I was so stressed during this because
we got to go record our thoughts. And
I've got to go to the bathroom,
order more food and drinks, and get back in the theater.
It worked out, but I was a little stressed about it. And my next note is, after we got through all the ads and previews, they just jumped right into this movie. There was I feel like there wasn't even a title thing. I mean, it was just
Cillian Murphy's right on the screen. I felt the same way.
I guess because we've also been watching so many older movies, I'm so used to kind of having that build up, or even Oklahoma had the whole interlude for like 3 minutes, that to just jump right into the movie, I was like, oh, okay, now like we've
watched too many old movies where they have like 10 minutes of like our opening titles.
Yeah, to let me like get comfortable, sit in my seat. I've grown to appreciate them, and now I hate that just sudden jump right in. My next note is, I wish there were years on the screen for a timeline, because it was just impossible to follow. And it makes me, I was so afraid. I was sitting there and I was like, oh, he probably knows exactly what's going on. Like, I feel so stupid. And then when you said that you had a hard time, that made me feel a lot better, because it was
I do my best, but I still could have used a visual aid.
And then Einstein, I feel kind of dumb, because in my mind he exists in like 1800, like, and that's not true, but my brain was so not prepared. And then every time he kept coming on the screen, I'm like, oh, that's right, he's around here. And that just, the whole Einstein plot threw me off. And then you were like, oh, I think that's Paul Giamatti. And then I got really excited that it would
Einstein,
be.
That's why I got confused. Like a Verizon commercial. It felt real dumb after as soon as I pointed out I was like, oh my God, because you see him in the distance at first. And I was like, oh my God, I think it's me, Paul Giamatti. Because we had seen him in a preview before and we talked about him. Yeah. Which also, Paul Giamatti's what, you said 56? Yeah. He looks way older than that.
I think they way aged him up in whatever preview we saw.
But I also feel like he's been around forever. And I feel like he should be much older than that.
I do agree. So then I kept thinking about Paul Giamatti every time Einstein was on the screen. It distracted me a little bit from what was happening.
Yeah, hard taken seriously. Like you should be Paul Giamatti.
And then the kind of back to the naked scenes when they were interrogating him in that non-trial whatever that was supposed to be, and she was just like naked on top of him and making eyes with Emily Blunt. It was just unnecessary and too much, and I think you could have gotten something across with a little bit less of that. Yeah,
I still don't really understand what they were trying to get at with that, and it was very jarring and odd.
And like, I'm not offended by the boobs. I don't really care. It just was like, I don't get what you're going for there, and it's just kind of weird, and maybe we could
I just want to know what that was like to film.
And that's also what I'm thinking is like, that's really uncomfortable, because she's just staring down. Oh, I guess probably the camera. Emily Blunt's probably not sitting in that small space, but weird.
Yeah.
Also, odd. Emily Blunt, I was not prepared for her to be in this, and her American accent was not great. It was like supposed to be kind of Southern. Yeah,
it was hard to kind of pinpoint what she was really going for there.
And just seeing her on the arm of Cillian Murphy, I was like, that's not John Krasinski. Come on. But I will say my one thing that I did really like about this movie is there was a lot of really good one-liners, more specifically from Matt Damon. Also, did not expect to see Matt Damon in this movie.
Yeah, he did a great
Had
job
no
with
clue.
like the somewhat comedic relief, which I don't know if this movie really needed, but he was pretty great in it.
But I think that's such a good representation of what real life is like when you're going through really stuff that's really stressful and really hard and weighs really heavy on you. There is always someone around who's probably going to make a joke that's dark, but you just kind of need someone to break that tension and bring you back to reality a little bit. And I really appreciated that character and the one-liners and Matt Damon, because again, I was not expecting him to be in this movie.
I also thought Emily Blunt's one-liners in her interrogation part, though, was pretty funny, and I could imagine John Krasinski being on set, just being like really turned on by that.
I wonder, do you think he like goes to set and watches her act, or do you think she's like, nope, you're not allowed
possibly have you there? I don't know.
Because he'd probably be looking to camera making Jim faces.
I mean, she had to be there when they were filming. Or was she in A Quiet Place? Yeah, they were in that together.
Yeah, they were in it together.
Yeah. So they must have been on set together at least one point. So we'll figure out whether that was a positive thing or a never again thing.
We are not allowed to work together anymore. Okay, so that wraps up my thoughts on Oppenheimer. I can't wait to go learn some more about it. Add more to my brain.
I think I'm going to be too tired after watching all this tonight to do a lot of research, but definitely want to do some more over the next couple of days.
Definitely. And now to just take a hard pivot.
Would you like to go first with your notes for Barbie? Or would you like to
I can go first for Barbie. Okay. To start off with in Barbie, the whatever mom joke they made about, girls playing with their baby dolls and you can only play mother for so long, like ask your mom. I laughed just too hard at that because that hit just like a little too close to
I felt like
home.
a lot of it in the beginning hit like really, really close for you.
Yeah.
For just moms in general.
We have 2 children, they're both girls. Being in the thick of early childhood mothering, it hit a little close for me.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I appreciated being able to laugh about it, but it was a little much. I died laughing at Barbie's feet when she took her shoes off. I was not expecting that to be expanded on as a plot point, but I thought that was hilarious because I remember as a kid playing with my Barbies and just like looking at her feet being like, I just don't understand why they don't make them flat. Like, why does Barbie's feet have to look like this?
I had never thought about that. And then I pictured Barbies with like flat feet. And I'm like, oh yeah, that would look real weird.
I think I maybe have one Barbie that has flat feet and it was for some specific reason, like whatever shoe she had.
Skis or something.
Yeah, something like that. But almost all my Barbies were like that. And I would always just like try to bend them to see if they'd go flat, and they don't.
Yeah, but plastic.
I should have just thought about death and despair and all those things.
See, I was gonna say just get a lighter, but I guess that would work too.
God. Okay, weird Barbie.
Well, I'm just saying that would make them flat.
You're like Sid from Toy Story that destroys all the toys.
No, I never did that to any of my toys, but that does sound like something he would do.
Yes. And Kate McKinnon as weird Barbie. Well cast. So good. I just loved, there was one scene, I think towards the end, where she was just like in a split stance, but like up against the wall in the background of this whole entire scene. And I'm sure she probably didn't have to stand like that forever, but it just was so funny and well done, especially with the drawing on her face. Cause you know somebody that drew on their Barbies.
I felt like they should have had more drawing on her face though, based on what the Barbie they showed, whatever, of someone like playing with it. I feel like she should have had much more all over her, but I did find that funny because you definitely know someone who did that to their Barbies.
Oh yeah. I would have been in so much trouble if I had done that, but I'm sure there are people out there. I don't know if you noticed, but in the beginning when they were kind of introducing the Barbie land, they were giving out the awards with the Senate and or the Supreme Court and the Barbie awards and stuff. The one giving the awards away was Penelope from Bridgerton.
No.
With the red hair. So she was speaking in an American accent, which threw me off. And maybe she is American. I don't know. But I was like, I know her. And which I felt like in most of the movie, I was like, I know this person from something. But she was Penelope from Bridgerton. I also thought it was funny how Barbie's car, the proportions, Barbie is physically larger than her car. And it was funny in the beginning, especially she's leaving Barbie land and driving off and you can tell she's bigger. But once America Ferrera gets in and is driving Barbie's car, and she's just been driving like a normal car, and to get into that smaller Barbie type car of just, that's how Barbie looks in her car, she's just bigger than everything. And just like the Barbie world in general, like the houses and
they were like, you can just see through everyone's houses. Like, I'm like, yeah, I guess that's true. You don't really think about that, but yes, you can see everything in the house from every perspective.
Yeah. And even just imagining like all of the 3 or 4 doll houses we have various doll houses we have upstairs. They're all just very see-through and, you don't actually walk the Barbies down the steps or the dolls down the steps. They just fall. They just end up down on the bottom floor. I thought all of that detail was really well done.
Even though some of them have stairs, you just never go down them.
No, definitely not. We have insert noise here. Ding! A reference to another Culture Night movie. Grease was shown, the Grease lightning scene.
For that patriarchy scene of like the men and he was doing the Grease lightning.
John Travolta. So that was exciting. I'm so glad that we have just recently seen that for that to come back. Yeah. And again, I already mentioned America Ferrera. I think, again, as a mom, going through some of the, like, I don't have a tween yet. Lord help me when I do. But the challenging moments with your kid, and especially your daughter, and you're just like, I definitely identified with that. But I think she did it really well, and I liked her character so much. I wasn't expecting to, but I just thought she played that really well.
Yeah. On that same note, I have a note that I am not ready for middle school with girls. Like, seems like a lot.
We are going to be in trouble. In so much trouble, hopefully.
And they're not going to overlap too. It's going to be like, you're going to be done with middle school, and then you're going to have no, I guess probably no break.
No break.
Probably go straight into middle school again. Oof.
We're going to have no break. It's going to be 6 straight years of middle school for us.
I think I'm gray now. Oof.
You'll be bald by then. No hair. Yeah. So think of us in a couple years. And then let's talk about Ryan Gosling for a second, because I just really wish they'd cast somebody else as Ken. I don't know how you feel about it. I thought he looked terrible. He looked very old to me. And I thought he looked like Draco Malfoy.
Sure. I definitely see that. I thought he seemed, I almost thought he looked like he hasn't aged that much in the past like decade. I think they probably could have had someone who looked a lot more stereotypical, like airheaded, play him. But I thought he did fine.
I think his acting was fine. I just felt like he looked, he's 42. And so I didn't really buy it. And I think like he's still a beautiful human. He's aging really well. I just could see where he had aged, and it was kind of taking away from him being Ken. Margot, however we undecided, however you pronounce her last name. I thought she was an excellent Barbie, but I don't know.
I think maybe the actor who played Plop from The Office / the love interest from Christmas Inheritance and whatever else he's in. Those are my 2 big ones for him. I think he could have been a good Ken.
I think I do agree. Yeah, and I think he'd have the like open mouth smile down really well. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something about Ryan Gosling was not. When I first heard it, I was like, oh yes, that's great. But watching it, it didn't really pan out for me as far as his looks.
Yeah,
I don't know. I wasn't. Yeah. And then my last note is a DCOM reference that you're not going to get, but I'm going to say it anyways, is at the very end when they're in the car and they're wishing her off to her OBGYN appointment. And I don't remember whether it's her husband that says, si se puede. And she has this whole Disney movie about a dance team and their motto is si se puede. And her husband says it and she goes, oh no, that's like a political reference. And she like totally writes him off, but she's like the queen of this phrase in this whole Disney Channel movie.
Oh man.
And
totally went by me.
Oh my God. And I was dying laughing.
I was wondering why you thought it was so funny.
Yeah. I thought it was hilarious because it's called Gotta Kick It Up. America Ferrera. I think it's like her debut movie. That's like the first thing I ever saw her in back in like 2002 or 3. It's very old. That I just thought that was interesting. I'm interested to Google and see if other people picked up on that because obviously I think most people of our generation are the ones seeing it. And I'm certain that they watched that back in the day. So
we just didn't have Disney Channel growing up.
I know.
So
I'm so sorry. One day we're gonna.
Technically, we had it. It was one of those weird things where it's like we didn't technically have the channel, but if you went to that channel, it was like half blurry, whatever.
I had that for a while, and then we finally got it, and I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
But don't worry. One day we're gonna do a DCOM season because someone needs to be educated in the DCOMs.
Cultured in it.
I'm sorry. Let's scratch that. Let's start over again. Someone needs to be cultured.
There it is.
in DCOMs. Okay, so those are my thoughts on Barbie. Actually, sorry, I have one more.
Go for it.
I will say, being a girl, woman, and having 2 daughters and being the mom of 2 daughters, I am excited to one day watch this with them and have conversations with them about it. And I know that's long off, especially our youngest is very little and doesn't even talk yet, that I'm excited for that time where we can watch this together. That was like my big takeaway.
Yeah. Interested to see how this is perceived in another, 15 plus years when we're watching with them. So onto my thoughts for Barbie. My first thought was that this, at least the whole beginning sequence, really reminded me of Lego Movie. I don't know if you've seen that with like the everything is awesome. Kind of it starts out with the song, looking around, everything's like so like super toy-like and plastic and perfect. Felt very, very similar to that.
I can see it. I've only seen it once. I didn't love it, so I'm not super familiar with it. But as you talk about it, it sounds familiar.
But then it also felt, again, hammered that home with the fact that Will Ferrell was in it as kind of like an outside person who's also in the movie, like outside of that world, but like still involved with it.
As soon as you said Lego Movie earlier, I was like, isn't Will Ferrell in that?
As kind of like the dad of the kid who's like putting together this whole Lego world in that. Yeah, so it felt like a lot of parallels there. Speaking of parallels, also the opening sequence with the voiceover felt very much like Bridgerton, like the British voiceover, especially because you mentioned what's her face from Bridgerton.
Penelope.
That it also felt very similar in nature to that, like they were trying to capitalize on when they were making this, to how I believe probably when the movie was first being formulated and made, Bridgerton was at its like peak of familiarity or of popularity, and so that probably influenced that in a bit. Next note being, like I said, I just wrote, fuck, I'm not ready for middle school. Just based on the sequence of her being at the middle school, or it might have been high school, like who knows how old kids are these days. It just felt very aggressive.
And how mean Sasha was to her mom. I was like, oh my God, that's going to be me. And I'm so not ready for that.
And getting rid of her toys. I'm like, but you love those toys?
Oh my God. Can you imagine when she's like, I couldn't possibly play with Princess Princess Aurora and Princess Rapunzel and
Casita.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm not ready for that. Well, I didn't know I was going to cry tonight.
Next note being that I was shocked at how they referenced Mattel and like made fun of it. Just seemed aggressive, and I don't know what the relationship is there, but thought it was funny. But also, I wonder if like there was some sort of issue there, or if Mattel no longer owns the brand, or what.
I feel like they'd have to, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, all those same thoughts were going through my head as I was watching it, and I loved it. I thought it was hilarious, and I mean, something that would probably completely glaze over my head until I was like 15 or older. But I thought that was really well done.
Yeah. I loved the Matchbox 20 references. I was jamming out and I don't know how, but as soon as he started playing the guitar, I immediately knew exactly what song it was. I was just like, a song I've not heard in a long time, but I did enjoy rocking out to that.
I did think it was funny, as it's like, the Kens are taking over, and he starts playing this song, and you instantly start singing it.
Before he even starts singing, yeah. Just no idea how that was top of my mind right there. And then they launched into a way too long musical number towards the end, and it felt reminiscent to some of the musicals we've watched from this season, where it's like 3/4 of the way through the movie, and they're like, hey, let's have a 13-minute long musical number dance sequence thing, and you're like, sure, I guess, okay, we'll sit through that.
Apparently the musical is not dead.
They're just trying to be just like the old musicals we all know.
They're really leaning into this nostalgia factor, right?
I thought the mother-daughter drama resolved too quickly.
It did resolve too quickly. That's not realistic.
Didn't really explain that. It's kind of like, oh, she hates her. Get in the car. There's a Barbie. And suddenly the girl's like, oh yeah, we're totally on board with this. It just seemed like they cut out a lot of plotline there.
And I think they also could have kind of showed that. I mean, we saw the mom take the Barbie out of the box when she had her Goodwill box. But I think kind of showing more of that, like what she did with it at home, and kind of explaining that outside of the story. I do agree. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, and they're just standing off to the side in their pastel outfits, just smiling as the Barbies take over. Like we needed a little bit more of like a one-on-one conversation between the two of them, because clearly there's a lot more there than just.
I don't know if there's like a deleted scene there.
Yeah.
Or what. Next note being on the ordinary Barbie thing. And they're like, oh yeah, like it's a dumb idea. Oh, it would really sell. It's like, well, I also feel like a lot of girls, like especially for certain ages, just really don't care what the doll is. They will play with it anyways.
I never understood the whole Barbie being controversial thing. I have a giant tub of Barbies at my parents' house. My cousin had the dopest Barbie stuff. I loved going to her house to play with Barbies. And not one time did I ever think, I need to look like Barbie. Also, I didn't look like Barbie. I have dark hair. I have one brown hair Barbie. And I liked her because she was also a teacher and I wanted to be a teacher. But I mean, all the Barbies were just Barbies. It was just a type of doll you played with. And I remember like people being like, oh no, my child will not have Barbies. And I remember thinking, but why? It's a doll. Like it's, and I, as a girl, I never understood that.
I don't know why they all have to be like themed though. It's like I guess they're doing it obviously for more money to raise the prices and have the various different roles they play. But it's like our kids play with like generic dog toy, generic bear toy. Like why does this like Barbie thing why can't it just be like girl? Why does it have to be flight attendant or teacher or construction worker Barbie?
Because that's how
I don't know.
America and society works. But I do love how Barbie is trying to expand. I know they have a Down syndrome Barbie now, and they have like the wheelchair Barbies, and I know they have some with like different skin discoloration and trying to be more representative of like, you know, Barbie is not just the blonde, perfect skinned, stereotypical Barbie, which I think, you know, to feel represented like that has its place and is important.
I did like how they referred to her as stereotypical Barbie and not like, you know, original Barbie or normal Barbie. It was stereotypical.
Yeah,
like
I think putting that title on it was really smart on their part. And makes sense because like I think it's fine to have a stereotypical Barbie and to have all the other kinds of Barbies too. Oh, I loved it.
And then I was disappointed they didn't have the Barbie song in the movie, the one by Aqua. However, they did have like a mashup of it in the beginning of the credits. So at least they had that nod to it. But I wonder if that was like a licensing issue or they just hate that song.
I will say one of the very first things I heard about this movie like a year ago or more, I mean, it felt like it was a long time ago, was that the Aqua song was not going to be on there. And I was like, well, what's the point of even making a Barbie movie if you're not going to have Barbie girl in there? But we did rock out to it on the way home and it was amazing.
So they had that like opening song that it would have been also really funny if it was just that song to be like a whole like opening of introduction to a Barbie world.
Ryan Gosling pull up in the car. Like I thought that would have been hilarious. Oh well. Missed opportunity. I'm sure there's drama there.
Yeah.
So is that the end of your notes?
That's the end of my notes.
Yeah. How do you feel about the Barbenheimer experience?
I definitely can see some parallels between the two, like as odd as as different as they seem of like, I think someone had put it as like, both movies are about, someone trying to exist in the world that they created. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I see that.
Totally fits there. And I think that's kind of the big parallel between them and, very different takes on a different, overall storyline.
I mean, and I think the big thing too is, you know, Barbie and J. Robert Oppenheimer are just so polar opposite, and for them to premiere the same weekend and they just be these like total opposite movies that it's just become this.
It's kind of genius of like, instead of being which one are you going to go to, it's you're going to do both. Do the Barbenheimer.
Porque no los dos.
The motto of our life.
That is literally our life motto. How come that's taken till right now after we've seen them for us to talk about that? Oh man. So I'm glad we did that. And this was a fun different switch up from the normal. Last question, how do you feel about the movie theater experience? Do you prefer the movie theater or do you prefer being at home?
I love previews. I like being in the theater because I feel much more compelled to like not be distracted. I didn't love how our projectionist really sucked, especially in the second one. The first one, the movie was kind of like shaped like a trapezoid.
I would not have noticed it if you hadn't pointed it out in the first one, but because you pointed it out in the first one, and then within the opening sequence of the second one, I was like, someone has effed up our projection.
And I even went out to guest services and told them about it, and they radioed, and I thought they were going to fix it, and they never did.
It was like the top, like it was a vignette. The top of everyone's head was just like blurred out.
Heavily vignetted at the top, missing like the top 10% of the screen, and on the left side there was also a slight vignetting. It was bad.
Very distracting, and it was pretty disappointing, to be honest.
Yeah, that I guess they just have no idea how to be a projectionist anymore. But overall, I do love being in a theater, as overpriced as it is. Honestly, the tickets weren't that expensive. It was obviously the concessions. That's where the theaters make their money. But I don't know. I just love going to the movies.
Yeah, I I liked the experience of the movies, but I think because we do this every week, I like the freedom to be able to pause it and go to the bathroom. I hate the people who make noise in the background. Barbie was loud. The
Especially
audience.
In the beginning, there was someone with an annoying laugh in the very opening credits. And I'm like, or opening scene. I'm like, if you do this whole movie, I'm gonna start throwing things at you.
Yeah, Oppenheimer was fine. People weren't obviously super reactive to that movie, but the Barbie experience was a little distracting, and I didn't love that. We didn't talk about what we ate. Do we need to talk about what we ate?
Yeah, I had the chicken melt. It was good.
I had a bacon brie burger that was delicious. I was so hungry.
It was honestly way better than I expected, and I thought it was gonna be just like really crappy low end food. But for eating in a movie theater, yes, it was expensive, but it also was very good.
I feel like the food was like a little expensive, but not terrible. I felt like the alcohol was a lot more overpriced than the food.
Yeah, but you think about like overall what we paid for it, it's like what we would have paid for like a regular date night. So it wasn't like it was more or less expensive. It was good.
Yeah. It was a fun night. It was fun to get out of the house, fun to have a just you and me night, or I'm sorry, like full afternoon, evening.
12 hours.
Yeah. And I hope you guys enjoyed this bonus episode. And
let us know if you liked it and if we should do more of them whenever more of these type of movies crop up.
Or do we need to stick with the old culture? Past?
Yeah, do you like the old stuff, the new stuff, both? Let us know.
Let us know. And we will be back next week with our regularly scheduled musicals, whichever one that will be.
Yep.
So
you'll hear it there.
Catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Cheers.